Hello, folks. My name is Girish, the host for Back to Basics, another Back to Basics for another week. We are going to be talking about sales, selling. What is important? How is it important? How do we sell in these type of ways? Because in the olden times, we used to knock on a door and start selling. Now it's a different aspect of it, and we're going to talk about that, what the differences are and what the difference is today, and what the difference is going to be in the future if it is the same as today. So we'll figure that out as we go along on this journey in this episode today. His name is Andy Paul to be exact, and he's on the call, and we're going to invite him into Back to Basics. So Andy, how are you? And thanks for coming to Back to Basics.
Girish, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you again for coming here and enjoying being on the show. So before we get into the details of the sales and selling and everything else that we're going to talk about,
right?
What does Back to Basic mean to you?
Focus on the fundamentals, right? Okay. And very important in sales. I just wrote a whole book about that. So they're just sort of some core human things we can do that as salespeople, as sales professionals, that enable us to connect with our buyers and help them achieve what's important to them.
Yeah. So thank you again, Andy, for coming on the show and explaining your meaning of Back to Basics, and thanks for coming here. Selling and sales, that is a big, huge topic, isn't it? How has it changed over the years, or has it changed? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you look at it at two different levels. I mean, one is the tools we use to sell to help us sell have changed substantially, right? Is especially over the last 20 years with the advent of sort of cloud-based CRM, and now we have our sales engagement, conversational intelligence tools, a sort of long laundry list of different types of sales tools available. But that doesn't cloak the fact that at heart, selling is still a human-to-human business. And the way that we interact with the people that we're trying to help, that hasn't changed enough, actually, in my mind. And it was one of the motivations for me to write my book, was that in that dimension of it, that dimension of sales, in terms of the way we interact with humans and help these other humans, these buyers, achieve the things that are most important to them, arguably we haven't improved at all in the last 15, 20, 30, 40 years. And so I wanted to explore that and perhaps find a path forward that enables us to get better.
Yeah. Thank you again. But the reason why I asked this is, let's talk about, let's say, call centers and customer service in general. Okay. That has changed over the years. The IVR has been more personalized, but I think when we click on the number one or number two for sales, we always need a human connection. And it seems like we connect that way when we do selling. I thought we're going ahead when it comes to the automation part, but I think sales is always human connection, isn't it? Or
well,
what are your thoughts on that?
It depends on the product, right? There's certainly, again, in the aftermath of the creation of Amazon and e-commerce, there's a much broader selection of products that we feel comfortable buying without talking to a human. But on the other hand, there's still a huge number of products that as buyers want to be able to talk to a human, because they want to make sure that they're on the right track, really. I mean, it's not like buyers can't go out and gather lots of information online about products and companies, and there's user review sites and so on. There's no shortage of information, but oftentimes in a company, making a purchase decision carries with it some element of risk for the company, perhaps for the individual themselves, from a career perspective. So part of their motivation for wanting to talk to sellers is to say, hey, have we really thought this through? Are we thinking about this the right way? Is there something we hadn't thought of? And they hope that the human seller can help them understand that better.
But then the example that you gave was Amazon, right? But Amazon has been there for the longest time. But what about the people who are starting fresh? I mean, they have to start selling as a human connection to find out what you're selling and how you're selling and what you're selling and how much you're selling and all that
Well,
fun stuff, right?
yeah, depending on the business, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, if you have something that's more consumer oriented or a relatively low price, I mean, we're seeing now in the software world this whole idea of product led growth, which is, sort of unattended by a seller. It's sort of back in the days of the freemium model or a low cost entry point, which you can then scale up without ever talking to a salesperson.
Yeah,
Sure. I mean, there's certain class of products that works for, but again, if you're dealing with something at some level of complexity or some element of risk, then buyers want to talk to a seller. Now, they'll make a decision which seller they want to talk to. Is this a seller that's just self-interested, pushy, persuasive seller, sort of stereotypical? Then they really don't have time for those people.
But right.
For salespeople who are there to really listen to the buyer, to understand what's most important things to the buyer, and then help them get that, then buyers have time for those people.
Yeah. Thank you again, Andy, for explaining that. Now, the world that we're going in is virtual based, right? And everything is really e-commerce, as you mentioned, right? Do you think sometime in my lifetime or your lifetime, do you think that the shops and retails are ta-ta bye-bye, or are they still here?
I mean, I'm not really an expert in that field, but my own opinion is that just start with the fact that they're still here. Yeah. So, what's going to change in the next 20 years? It says, look, Best Buy will go out of business. I mean, the fact is that still a very substantial fraction of consumer electronics purchases are made through brick and mortar stores. That's what happens is people research it online, but there's still, broad swath of people that want that validation in the decision they made by going into a store and talking to a sales clerk.
Yeah.
And, similarly with auto buying. I mean, everybody claims on one hand they hate going to auto dealerships and dealing with the salespeople there, but they provide a service.
Yeah.
I mean, because you can certainly buy almost any car you want online today without ever going into a dealer. Yet, not most people don't do that.
Of course.
And so I think it's part of that is they want that, that reassurance that they're making the right choice, the validating of the decision. And I don't see that going away anytime soon. I think that the alternatives will become more sophisticated, more tuned into people's individual preferences, and will make it easier. But it's a human personality type.
Yeah. Thank you again, Andy, for explaining that. And I know you're no expert, but I just wanted to pick your brain to see where do you think that we're all going, and from your opinion too. So thank you again for that.
It's all going to get more automated, more intelligent, more tuned into our preferences, because it's going to.
And the reason why I'm mentioning all these type of questions and similar questions on my other shows is because slowly we're getting into the metaverse, and slowly we'll get into the non-human touch, a new human connection, as we say. So it's
sure, but it depends. Again, it'll depend on the type of product and service you're talking about.
Yeah,
and I think that there's we see these examples already. Is there are already AI-driven applications, let's say, used in medical decision making that say, hey, here's Mr. and Mrs. Patient, or Mr. and Mrs. Patient, here are the alternatives for this procedure you need to go through. Here are the risks, blah, 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 blah. And research has shown that, actually they make those applications probably make a better recommendation perhaps than a human doctor. People still want a human doctor. It's something that's life-threatening, something that is a major medical is people want that assurance. And so I'm not sure if that ever goes away.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again for explaining that. So people who are online, please do comment and ask any questions. Maybe I missed something. Maybe it's a sales question. Maybe it's a selling question. Or what is the difference between the two? What are the differences between the two, Andy? What are your
well, I mean, sales is the noun and selling's the verb, right?
There you go.
There you go. That's the difference.
Exactly. Yeah. So thank you again. So Andy, you created this book called sell without selling.
Selling out. Sell without
Sell.
selling out.
Yeah. So explain that. How did this name come up, and what is this all about?
Well, what's about is basically drawing a line in the sand and saying, look, there are these obsolete legacy sales behaviors that we're all familiar with, that we see in popular culture. Maybe we've experienced them at, perhaps an auto dealer. Not to anything wrong with most people, very professional within auto dealers, but is this, I said, sort of pushy, persuasive, maybe a little sleazy, or comes perception as being a little sleazy, purely self-interested salesperson out for themselves, which I call selling out. Those are what I call salesy behaviors, and we've all experienced them at one point or another.
So when you wrote, go ahead, please. No, please go ahead.
Well, I believe that those behaviors have no value for buyers. So we could stop them today. We could just say universally across the world, everybody that indulges in those types of behaviors, just stop, because they don't help you. And if we stop today, no one would be the worse off for it. So the counterpart to selling out is what I call selling in, which is, we're going to lean on these core human attributes we have that we're wired, as humans, we are wired to do, which I call connection, curiosity, understanding, generosity, and use those to be able to help our buyers make informed decisions with less investment of their time.
Yeah. When you created this book, did the title come first, or did the situation comes first?
The situation came first. The title came about relatively late in the game, actually. Okay. So
may I ask what was the first two choices, or this was the only choice?
I'm not even sure I remember the first few. I mean, there's probably been a handful before this one, but I had the idea. I just didn't. It was nice to have the title, sort of this unifying through line to pull everything together. So I credit my editor with helping come up with that title.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. Thank you, editor, for
that. Amanda Lewis.
Awesome. Thank you again. So let me ask you this. So
sure.
How did it trigger for you to start this book? Was there like a gap that no one really had, or this was from your observation? What are your thoughts on that?
A combination. So I started with my observations and frustrations with the way selling is done. And then, I as I started writing it, it was like, no one's really focused on it this way. And so, I did try to fill what I thought was really a pressing need for people to be able to hear the message that there's a bad way to sell, which we don't want to indulge in. But beyond that, we're trying to figure out the best way to sell. The best way is the way that is best for us as individuals. And the book is a roadmap really for people to say, this is how I can become or start to become the best version of myself in a sales context. And also as a guide for managers and leaders to say, these are the elements we should be trying to develop in our sellers.
So when you're selling something, do we look at numbers, or do we look at the quality and the best way to sell?
No, explain what you mean.
So there's a quote that I read, and it says, "Do not focus on numbers, but focus on what you do best." So
I think maybe another way to phrase that is don't focus on numbers so much as focus on the outcomes for the buyer, right? If you can help the buyer achieve their desired outcomes and do that with enough regularity, you're going to hit your targets. You're going to make the money you want as a salesperson. Zig Ziglar talked about, if you help, paraphrasing, if you help enough other people get what they want out of life, you'll get what you want out of life. And that should inform your actions. Says, I'm here to help you. If I can help you achieve these outcomes, which are most important to you, then I will achieve the outcomes then that are important to me.
Yeah. So thank you again. So, sales and telemarketing and I guess sales, right? So what are the two differences? Because telemarketers can become pushy, and so can salesperson, right? But
Yeah,
how do we say no when they're becoming pushy?
just say no.
Yeah, but some people they feel bad. That's what I'm saying, Andy.
Then well, yeah, don't
So
feel
what?
bad. I mean, is if you're not interested, just say no and hang up. Um, and they'll go call somebody else and they'll have forgotten about you in 2 seconds because they're on to the next call.
Hmm,
Yeah, I mean, it's that job of, let's say, consumer-based telemarketing is, not easy work. I
hmm,
mean, and yeah, you sort of develop a little bit of a resilience in terms of, people perhaps being rude to you. Yeah, it's because purely interrupt driven, right? I'm interrupting people doing something else. And
sure.
from a business to business standpoint, yeah, we do a little bit of that as well. As we have people that our job is to make proactive outbound phone calls, cold calls. But if you are providing a service though too, and that's the point that you have to
Hmm,
have in mind as you're approaching people is that I'm selling something that is valuable to companies that when they utilize this product and a service. The trick is in these sort of very noisy times is just capturing a bit of a time and attention of the person you're talking to be able to have them perhaps say, yeah, I want to continue to invest some time and learn more.
hmm. A person who's not a salesperson, how can
Mhm.
they start becoming a salesperson? What are the coach items do you give? Their top three, let's say.
Well, I mean,
What are your nuggets that you give people?
yeah, I mean, yeah, not really comfortable calling people persons. I think you're a person who's in sales, right? You're a person who's
Okay.
selling because it implies a certain type, and there's not a type. It's just it's a thing many people do, many different people do. I do it differently than everybody else in the world that does it, and everybody else in the world does it differently than me. I mean, it's like we all do it our own way. The commonality, though, is that we have to sort of come from a position of service.
Hmm,
I'm this is a service I provide. Selling is a professional service, just like many others that I provide to help my buyers improve their businesses in one dimension or another. So you
hmm,
start with this element of service,
hmm,
there to help people. So in order to do that, in order to help them, what do you have to do? Well, you have to be able to connect them on a human level so that you build some level of trust so they'll open themselves up to you, asking questions that are let's call it sticking their nose into their business, right?
right.
Because the only way you can really learn what's important to your buyer and how you can help them is to be given that permission to ask those types of sort of penetrating questions that demand the buyer give you information that they wouldn't normally give to anybody outside the company.
Hmm. Well, a person who's in let's say, who's a influencer and a entrepreneur, right? And they have
Mhm.
all these followers. These followers are maybe a community or just
Mhm.
followers in general. How do you convert those followers to people to buy?
Well, that's the age old question, right? It is how
Yes,
do you do that?
because now we're coming to the digital world, right? So how do you do that besides being, let's say, if you sent an email marketing instead of spamish, you want to send them a proper email with a promotion or whatever. So what are
Well,
your
I think
thoughts
I
on?
think if you're an influencer,
Mhm.
you have to first build that level of trust. To become an influencer, you have to build that level of trust with the people that are in your audience that follow you.
Yes.
And so if you're going to abuse that trust by sending them spammy emails, then you'll lose that trust, right? You won't
Of
have
course,
that.
of course, of course.
So part of the way you build that trust is to, again, as an influencer, you start by giving, right?
Mm,
So what can I give? How can I give to help you in your world? If it's, for me as a sales influencer, as, what can I say? I'm very conscious about in the posts I make every day on LinkedIn. Is this going to help the people that follow me, that are looking for some sort of advice, some sort of really not even advice as much as they're just looking for a new perspective on something that they've been doing. They've undoubtedly read books, listened to podcasts, but that's really, I think, our role is just to help people think perhaps differently than they have about what selling meant to them, for instance. So yeah, in order to have people, decide to, my followers to buy this book it starts with a level of trust.
Yeah.
And being first and foremost about them before yourself.
Yeah, I think the trust goes a long way, doesn't it? And to maintain that trust throughout the time, that is also another thing, which I guess that's what Back to Basics is all about: being honest and truthful, and just like a regular person, just like myself.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, just operate with integrity. That's really the thing. Is people, if you say this is what people should do, then make sure you're doing those things yourself.
Yeah. Andy, thank you again for that. Now, you've written this book. What is Andy Paul for the next 5 years? Are we having another book?
I would like to have another book. I've got 2 or 3 in mind that are out there in various shape or form. So yeah, I'd like to. Yeah, while I'm still have the energy and the ability to do it, I'd like to write some more books. Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, the next time when you do write the book, please do remind us and come back to this show, and then we'll talk about in detail about
We'll
that
do
book
that. I
too.
appreciate the opportunity.
And I will take my abilities to get the book that you have now, and then have you signed, and we'll figure that out on the details of that. But thank you again, Andy, for coming on the show. So before you leave, how was your journey on Back to Basics? And any last words for all the viewers and listeners on my show?
No, this is great. Thank you for having me. And yeah, if people want to connect with me, please go to LinkedIn. It's probably the easiest way to do it. And connect with me and message me if you'd like to have a conversation, or visit my website at andypaul.com. And you can buy my book wherever you buy books.
Yeah. So thank you again, Andy, for
Thank you.
coming on the show, and very honored and very grateful, and I'm glad that I connected you on LinkedIn. So
yeah, me too.
Thank you again for that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Guys, we spoke with Andy today, and we talked about the basics of selling and sales, and how to be salesy, and how to be human connected, and how to build that trust that between the customer and you. Now, yes, in the middle of the episode, I did mention that there was a quote of the day, but the quote was already mentioned earlier during the episode, and here's the quote anyway, and I'm going to repeat it. Do not focus on numbers, focus on doing what you do best. And now Andy's already explained the details of this quote, and I'm glad that he did, because you know what? It's up to you how you want to deal with sales and be salesy, and a human connection too. As usual, as always, what do I always say at the end of the episode? Everything in life goes back to basics, and that's what we did today, guys. Guys, take care, God bless. Keep on commenting on all my episodes, because it does help me to go beyond and be a great person thanks to you guys. And there are 3 things in every episode, including today's, is the best, which is the content and the guest, and definitely the host. Guys, take care, God bless, and see you next week on Back to Basics. Take care, God bless. Next week's episode on Back to Basics,
called a white coat effect. So you go to the doctor's office. Maybe you don't tend to measure your blood pressure. You go to the doctor's office. You're 142 over 80, which is elevated blood pressure. Let's just call it that. And that's, now you start thinking that you're going towards hypertension. But the reality is that if you were measuring your blood pressure at home, you'd probably be with an FDA medically approved device. You'd be in a normal range, which is in the 120s, 115s. So that's something where we're seeing that